Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Hello everyone, good evening, and it's time for the weekly Sutta readings. And again, we are going through the Sutta number 4 of the Majjima Nikaya, the Bhayabherava Sutta, or Fear and Dread. So we talked about how it's describing the Bodhisattva. So that's the Lord Buddha before his awakening, his practice, and how he resorted to the jungle thickets, and how this is a place of great fear and dread, and fear and dread from natural forces, from disease, and even bandits of the sort. So, how a wandering ascetic or a meditator can survive in such an environment without falling into fear and paranoia. So it's because it's a great source of fear and paranoia, and this is quite useful uh, even for those who do not go into the jungle, because sort of fear and dread is part and parcel of the human condition, of the human life. We always come across fearful things, and sometimes it's self-inflicted. If we keep watching news and watching horror movies, the news is a horror movie, or even being in an unsafe environment in cities or villages, or or the countryside. So it's sort of something that we always come across, and the Buddhist path is helping us to deal with all the ups and downs in life. And fear and paranoia is one of them that every single human being has to come across at some point in their life, and sometimes all through their lives for certain people who are unfortunate. Um, so we need to build up techniques in order to deal with it, and a lot of people figure out how to do it, how to develop coping mechanisms for a fearful life. However, there are a lot of people who are incapable of it, or they never get the opportunity. But all through our lives, the life is so unpredictable, the world is so unpredictable, that you never know what you will come across, especially the world that we are walking into now, into the future. um, it's good to have coping mechanisms, and the practice of meditation is the best coping mechanism there is, because it turns you into your own therapist, into your own refuge, so that you don't need to look anywhere else, but look within and find that safety, find that armor, through the practice of dana and sila and bhavana. So that's practice of generosity, the practice of virtuous living, and the practice of meditation, which is the path that the Buddha taught. So we stopped off where we talked about the characteristics that the Bodhisattva had cultivated before he started this kind of intensive practice. So he mentioned his purification of livelihood, of action, of intention. So he wasn't intending to uh, get rich and famous, or to be better than anyone, or to out of hatred for anyone and such unwholesome things. But his intentions were fully wholesome. They were they were quite ethical, ethical means and ethical stand and ethical ends uh, was the way in which the Lord Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, conducted himself. And so, this is the preliminary practice that is advised for all Buddhists, that you start off the path with generosity and sila. So, being established in the sila, so being established in the precepts, in virtuous living, and this sort of settles down your mind, that stops you from running around like your head's on fire, and you're capable of being taking a step back and try to understand things before jumping in. And this really sharpens the mind and strengthens it, and makes it very useful and wieldy in any situation. So that's the strength that discipline can give to a person. And now, next, Buddha will be talking about the practice of meditation in order to overcome fear and dread. I consider thus: there are the specially auspicious nights of the 14th, the 15th, and the 8th of the fortnight. So those are the what are called the Uposatha days. These were then and now considered to be sort of special days in Asian cultures. That's when the half moon, quarter moon, full moon, new moon, like that. Now, what if on such nights as these I were to dwell in such awe-inspiring, horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines? So this must have been, it's a really interesting glimpse at the life in rural India at the time. So in the jungles, that people had these shrines to local deities. I think, I'm assuming that's what it is. I think they're still around nowadays, and I hope it doesn't happen now. But sometimes people used to do sacrifices to them, like human sacrifices, even human sacrifices. Still do, I think, and so they are quite horrifying places. And the Lord Buddha was gonna go and stay in places like this just to fight fear, just to understand what fear is and to overcome it. Because you can imagine, if you're gonna go and hang out in a place where they do human sacrifices, you wouldn't be feeling too comfy or happy. So perhaps I might encounter that fear and dread. And later on, such specially auspicious nights as the 14th, the 15th, and the 8th of the fortnight, I dwelled in such awe inspiring, horrifying abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines. And while I dwelt there, a wild animal would come up to me, or a peacock would knock off a branch, or the wind would rustle the leaves. I thought, what now if this is the fear and dread coming? I thought, why do I dwell always expecting fear and dread? What if I subdue that fear and dread, while keeping the same posture that I am in when it comes upon me? So you can imagine him sitting there in this horrifying place, and there are wild animals that come around. Sometimes they knock off a leaf or a branch, even peacocks rustling through the leaves, and you're sitting there with your eyes closed, and all you can think of is something coming to kill you, because that's the mind state that you're in. You are expecting the worst, and you hear the slightest sound, you believe it's someone coming to kill you. It's like a tiger coming to eat you, or a human trying to sacrifice you. Or so when this fear and dread came upon him, he thought, why do I always stay here expecting this fear? So you can, like, it's sort of like, you're sitting there feeling really anxious, just waiting for the worst to happen. And this is obviously not gonna make you feel good or happy. So he say, like, why am I always here expecting fear and dread? Well, what if I subdue this? And how does he subdue it? He's thinking, like I will not change my posture. So if he's sitting down, he wouldn't stand up and walk, or if he's walking, he wouldn't try to quell this fear by calming himself down by sitting. And even lying down, he wouldn't try and get up, so he wouldn't try to run away from the fear, and instead try to subdue it mentally. So try to basically confront it. So, and that is really the basis of meditation practice. It's like it requires a direct confrontation with your inner demons, and this is how you subdue them. Of course, there are um, you can take skillful means. So, like in the beginning, if a meditator is quite unstable in their mind, they can sort of make tactical retreats, if you may, and not have to do it so intensively. But for one who is as determined as the Buddha is, he chose direct confrontation each time. And it's quite an inspiring sort of practice, and quite useful as well if one believes that they're ready, if one is established in the Sila, especially, and if one is full of faith and energy. It is this kind of attitude really helps us to really understand the state of our minds, of how to subdue these unwholesome qualities in our mind, these inner demons, if you may, like uh, not just fear and dread, but such things as anger or greed or pretty much anything. If you are capable of not running away from it or not running towards it and wallowing in it, wallowing in indulging in it, if you're capable of just taking a step back and not letting it affect your behavior uh, through body or mind, through body or speech or even mind, you are capable of understanding what it really is. And what it really is, this fear or this greed or this hatred, what it really is just another phenomena. It is a phenomena that is impermanent, that is not self, that you cannot identify with, and it is one that causes suffering. So it's anatma, anicca, and dukkha. And when this realization comes, uh, you are more capable of being stable and steadfast in your resolve, and not fall so easily to these states of mind. So this is what is being taught here, that when this fear and dread came upon, do not change the posture, do not run from it, do not try to seek an escapism, try not to run away to a comfortable thing. So try not to comfort yourself or anything, but just to deal with it, just to suck it up and deal with it. And that is that is vipassana, that is meditation. It's so you start off with the concentration exercises to make it easier, but you could start off like this as well. So while I walked, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither stood nor sat, nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I stood, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked nor sat, nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I sat, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked nor stood nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I lay down, the fear and dread came upon me. I neither walked nor stood nor sat down till I had subdued that fear and dread. So you can see his resolve here. There are Brahmin, some recluses and Brahmins who had perceived day when it is night and night when it is day. I say that on their part this is an abiding in delusion. But I perceive night when it's night and day when it's day. Rightly speaking, were it to be said of anyone. So that last part sounds a bit um, confusing. So it's mentioning some recluses and Brahmins who perceive day when it's night. So may like I interpreted it as in meditation, especially breathing meditation, anapanasati, uh, when concentration is established, when you can stay still for a while and stay with the breath for a while, there comes these visions of light and visions of light, really bright lights, either flashes or stable light that envelop your entire field of vision. And these are called nimittas. And maybe a certain Brahmin who or a meditator who's quite good at meditating may try to use these to escape the fear. So if you are at night and you're scared out of your mind, and you get this, you use these lights to believe it is daytime, and and escape from it. But the Buddha is saying that's just a delusion. But so he tries to just stick with what is real, always sticking with reality and not trying to run off into fantasies to comfort oneself. Rightly speaking, were it to be said of anyone, a being not subject to delusion has appeared in the world for the welfare and happiness of many, out of compassion for the world, for the good, welfare, and happiness of gods and humans. It is for me indeed that rightly speaking this should be said. Tireless energy was aroused in me, and unremitting mindfulness was established. My body was tranquil and untroubled, my mind concentrated and unified. So that is when the when he said, it is said that beginning from here is where he started to fight against delusion, against moha, and this is sort of the beginning of his awakening. And tireless energy was aroused, so he was able to really apply himself to meditation. And the subject, it is said in the commentaries, is anapanasati, is breathing meditation. So breathing meditation is what the Buddha used to attain enlightenment, and even used it after to abide in feeling really nice. And this is something that's been taught for a long time now. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. That is described in the first jhana. And with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, I entered upon and abided in the second jhana, which has self confidence and singleness of mind, without applied and sustained thought, with the rapture and pleasure born of concentration. So, these jhanas, what is called applied and sustained thought, is described as these mental factors that applied thought sort of drives you on to the object. It's sort of like it sticks your mind on an object, and the sustained thought sort of keeps hold of it. So you can imagine, like through the process of breathing, it is applied thought that jumps on it, and sustained thought keeps you through it. And in meditation that does not have jhana, our mind is always jumping in and out of the object, is always running away. But there is a real absorption with the object in a meditative trance, and with it there is a great deal of pleasure and rapture that is born of seclusion from the senses. So this is sort of an experience that is goes beyond the normal five senses. So it's sort of it's really a whole new level of experience that cannot be compared to anything in our worldly life. And the second jhana is one where you don't need this applied and sustained thought. It's just there, it's always there. The the concentration is just there. There's just a singleness of mind is just there. With the fading away as well of rapture, I abided in equanimity, and mindful and fully aware, still feeling pleasure with the body, I entered upon and abided in the third jhana, on account of which noble ones announce, he has pleasant abiding who has equanimity and is mindful. So this process of journeying through the jhanas, the first one is very hard to get to, and then it's so great, but you need to start to look at it wisely and see that certain factors are quite gross and need to drop them off and keep the more refined ones. Like that, just need to keep going forward. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, I entered upon and abided in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and purity of mindfulness due to equanimity. When my concentrated mind was thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, I directed it to that knowledge of the recollection of past lives. I recollected in my manifold past lives. So that's after dropping out after the fourth jhana. This is one of the called the abhinyas, is the recollection of past lives, um, and this is sort of the belief in past life is not so prevalent nowadays because it is the modern paradigm. It is just the world physicalist philosophies are the norm nowadays. So therefore the belief in rebirth is not as prevalent as it was in Buddhism before, but it is an essential part of the of the practice. And anyone who sort of practices quite diligently, quite intensively even, uh, one will come across certain understandings, certain realizations, and phenomena that cannot be explained without adding past lives into the equation. So it is sort of a belief that you pick up along the way, because it does make sense when one studies the Dhamma as well, because the Buddhism doesn't explain rebirth using a everlasting soul. So there is no Atma in Buddhism. There is no spirit, no soul here that's going to float up or float away to another body like a hermit crab, but rather it's this really complex, really intricate explanation of conditioning, of conditional relations, of it's sort of like information being passed on. It's like it's very hard to explain. You need to study the Abhidhamma in order to properly grasp it. But there is a very good explanation of how it works in the Tipitaka, and it's like well, sort of an interaction between many different phenomena and natural phenomena called dhammas, and through this vast network of interactions is what life arises. uh, Really 5 minutes is not enough time to explain it, and it requires a lot of consideration. But most people who are born in Buddhist countries are quite lucky to be sort of have faith in it, be born into that belief. I cannot confess that I am that lucky, because I lost faith for a long time in Buddhism, and was an atheist. So I didn't believe in rebirth or samsara until I became started meditating and started practicing the Dhamma and learning about the Dhamma. So it's sort of something you pick up along the way, and it is a very useful idea to have, because it is sammaditthi. It is essential for attainment to nibbana. So that's all the time that we have for today. And next week we will go through the rest of this sutta. It is quite an intense teaching because we are confronted by the fact that that in the Buddhist path there are no really easy answers. It is something that we have to do a lot of work on. So it doesn't give us a quick solution. It requires diligence, it requires persistence, and it requires a lot of commitment. And really, that is why it is so effective and so endearing to a lot of people, because there are because it's effective. Like, I mean, nothing worth getting is easy, right? So the Buddha doesn't give us a quick solution. It gives us only the path that we need to walk on, and that path may be difficult at times, and it requires a lot of self-confidence and a lot of courage, a lot of moral and spiritual courage. And I hope that listening to this sutta gives you that impression of its necessity, and also inspires you to practice diligently, because this world is full of fear and dread, and practicing the path will lead you to a place that is beyond fear, and that is assured for one who practices according to the instructions. So, with that, I will leave you today, and thank you very much for listening, and see you next week. So.